Thanks, Zoom Lady.
Thank you, Lucas. Yeah, that Zoom Lady voice is an interesting one. Anyway, we only have half an hour, so I'm going to dive right into this. I will also share my screen so that I can go over the agenda and still see all your faces. Right, so in a nutshell, in 12.2, we were trying to make an effort to move all the security reports logic from the front end to the back end for the pipelines and the merge request page. In 12.3, we have an issue to remove them apps and replace them with more like security dashboard style things. So my plan is to stop refactoring the applications that we're about to delete, because that seems like a bit of a waste of time. And we can still sort of reuse all the back-end work in creating the endpoints that we were going to use. We just need to sort of change them slightly and I guess reposition the front-end effort to focus more on replacing these apps with what UX's suggestion than refactoring them. So, I mean, I'm going to fly through this, but if you read through the doc, there's a lot more information and links to issues and things like that that kind of explain a little better. I want this meeting to be more about questions that people have or any issues that people see with the approach and that sort of thing. So a first step would be for solving move the reports logic for all the reports on the pipelines page. Just put the sort of dashboardy type thing inside the pipeline security tab. This is a mock-up I have done. It will not look exactly like this. This took me about 3 minutes. Apologies, Andy. So yeah, I mean, we can use the endpoint that Ross created to allow us to pass in the pipeline ID and just render essentially the similar sort of view of the dashboard, but in the security tab on the pipelines page. And that gets all the reports logic out of the front end and into the back end and moves us into this more sort of dashboard style approach that we're looking for on the merge requests thing. So that should be a relatively easy win. For the merge request thing, it's a little different because obviously merge requests deal with comparing two different reports, so we can't just really plug and play. So the plan is for the boring solution to create a new empty tab in the merge request view for the security report, like it is on the MVC issue and kind of like it is on the pipelines page. We had a quick look into that this morning, and the way we handle tabs on the merge request page is very weird. So this is a pretty beefy step in itself. That should be kind of easier with the announcement that we're moving very quickly towards single code base now, but it's still quite a big step. And then once that's done, move the existing merge request widget with the 4 separate lists into that new tab, so that when we click on the expand button in the widget, it takes us to that tab. Expand might be the wrong word here, but you get the idea. Instead of opening up the report, we move to that new tab. And then the big bit of work needs a little bit of tweaking on the back end and more front end again. And that is to replace the content in that tab with, again, like a more dashboardy type thing, like we've got in the actual this MVC issue here that UX have brought up. The big change we need to the API endpoint, apologies, Can, is that instead of having 3 arrays of added, fixed, and existing vulnerabilities, It'll probably need to be one array with a status of added, fixed, or existing on each of the vulnerabilities. I don't know how simple or hard that'll be, so open to suggestions on that one, I guess. But it will need to be something like this so that we can deal with pagination properly, and then ideally some way of filtering by status as well, in the same way that we do filtering for report type or whatever it is on the other dashboards. And then we may need a new API endpoint for the report summary, because the merge request widget will be something like this, where we've got 15 new security findings, 1 fixed vulnerability, and 4 dismissed vulnerabilities. I don't think we have an endpoint that will give us these numbers at the moment. If we do, great, let me know what it is. If we don't, then we probably need something.
Yeah, I have a question. This counts is just for so there will be counts for each report type, right?
I'm not sure. The UX isn't totally finished on this, but this one's suggesting that this is all the report types sort of merged together. So these 15 new could be 13 SAST and 2 DAST ones or whatever.
Okay, but that is to be clarified, right?
Yes, that is to be clarified. Okay. I'm not sure right now. Yes, and then the 2 front-end changes are obviously to use that endpoint to update the MR widget to what I've just showed you, and to actually migrate that dashboard to the MR page, which will give us the full moving reports logic to the backend, and we can completely delete the group security reports app and the split security reports app, which are the 2 front end apps that currently handle all the logic. So I have sort of flown through that. Are there any questions at this point? I've got a couple of questions myself, but I'll take other people's questions now, I guess, or anything I've missed.
I have one question on the backend API and whether we have any responsibility to make that backwards compatible if anyone externally is using that, or whether we can change it any way we see fit just for the internal use of the app. If anyone knows the answer to that.
I would imagine we don't need to, because the current proposal, this one here, that only got added about 2 days ago. So we should be okay with not making it backwards compatible with this one. Yeah, I mean, I can't say.
Is this change going to ship?
I don't know. That was going to be my question. If we ship it, then maybe that changes.
No, it's an internal endpoint anyway. It's just for front-end use. We don't push that on the public API, right?
It's not documented, so it's not public.
I mean, it's an internal race controller. It's not on the public API, because we have 2 kinds of APIs. We have the public API that can be leveraged by any third party, and then we have internal race controller providing JSON endpoints, but it's just for our front-end use.
Yes.
So in this way, we can do whatever we want and change it without backward compatibility.
Thanks.
Cool.
Right.
I'm more concerned by the fact that. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go for it. I've got big loaded question, so go for it.
Yeah, I'm more concerned by the fact that we now need to potentially group all the report types in a single call instead of having granular calls, because what we need to consider is that unlike the group dashboard call, which is a database call, here we will be fetching multiple artifacts, report artifacts, and passing them on the fly. So I still think it's fine, because we are now waiting the end of the pipeline. As far as I remember, we are waiting the end of the pipeline before passing them to make sure all the jobs are finished. So maybe there is no issue, but this is something we need to check, to double check, and make sure there is no performance issue or any other issues by doing this way.
Quick follow up to that one. So I mean, the problem is that the new UX design kind of also requires to show all the different reports in one, similar to the group dashboard, if I interpreted it correctly. Is there like a potential performance downside because we need for all to be passed instead of having 4 calls in parallel? Because if I, do the 4 comparison calls in parallel, there could be a performance benefit because different Rails workers or whoever does it can already return the results of the diff, right?
I don't think we have any concurrency behind that for the parsing. It's just sequential parsing on the right side of all the reports. But what's funny is that can just push logic to access separately those reports.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We have separate endpoints for those.
Yeah, and well, previously we had separate lists for each one as well, but the new proposal is one list to rule them. I don't know why I'm going at Lords of the Rings quotes here, but you get the point. It's one list with all the reports in, rather than 4 separate lists, which is why that kind of needs to change.
Okay, so because I also so just one endpoint for everything.
Yes.
Okay.
At least this is what we are proposing, right? If it makes it harder on the backend, this is open to discussion, but we are proposing to basically mimic the behavior of the other endpoints. I mean, from a front-end implementation point of view, it will be another dashboard. So we would be happy to use as much logic as possible. But if you're seeing that those views will diverge in the future, we should discuss about the thing. But from a front-end perspective, once we are at search, right, or at filtering for projects and these kind of things, having those filters and pagination on 4 endpoints is kind of harder than having 1 endpoint from a front-end consuming perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, the public API also is behaving like that, so definitely makes sense. I mean, today's public API to gather vulnerabilities is giving all of them, and there is a filter by report type, so makes sense.
Okay, are we ready for Thomas's loaded question now?
Okay, you've already got part of this question. My question is more targeted. Removing Docker and Docker is becoming increasingly a priority. How can we, and we have now coupled this issue with removing Docker and Docker, and my question is, how can we decouple them? How can we not block removing Docker from SaaS and other areas and move forward on this at the same time? Where is the core set of overlap? And these are questions I know most of the answer to, but I'd love to hear it from this group.
Yeah, so I mean, the reason I brought that up was because when I went to find the original issue for migrating the SaaS reports, I noticed it had moved from the migration epic to the Docker in Docker epic. So I'm not really sure what it is that makes that a requirement for removing Docker in Docker.
I'll jump in if you want.
Yeah, please.
This requirement only apply on SaaS and dependency scanning because those 2 features are relying on separate jobs, separate analyzers to do the analysis. So the feature to get rid of Docker in Docker require that we split that into separate jobs, which means we will have separate reports produced instead of just one general reports. And currently the front-end is parsing only 1 report. So if we want to split that into separate job, we need to have the logic to parse several reports of the same type at once, which is something that has just been made on the backend side recently. So either we are doing the same thing with current front-end and we can support it right now, but it means we are putting effort on front-end that is going to be thrown away, or we are moving all the logic to the backend when we already are able to parse multiple reports from the same type. And this needs to have the front-end refactor to handle that backend logic.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, that being said, we also have other blockers, not blockers, but questions on the way we want to split into multiple jobs for SAST and dependency scanning. So this might be left as an issue. I mean, if we are not able to complete the other task anyway, you still have some time to progress on this. But I would definitely advocate to keep moving the logic on the backend side instead of putting efforts on the front end to support multiple reports.
So yeah, I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say my only worry was that obviously we're potentially. I mean, I've put milestones here. They're just we've almost plucked them out of the air, but with pushing, because this, what am I trying to say? Moving these reports, we move them all at once, whereas previously we were going to move them a report at a time. And if we do it this way, we might potentially push the actual moving of reports to the back end into 12.4. Like if which would then block the Docker in Docker thing and push that back to 12.4 as well. So I guess it's how much of an issue would that actually be? Yeah.
We also have the possibility, and I mean, it would be busy work and duplicated work, right? If we know that the Docker and Docker SAST requirement is like a game, we need to do this to come over the 90-yard line or whatever football reference, or I don't know. We can also, because Sam has done the work, right? We can also look into moving SAST and the dependency scanning in the old widget to the new API. Don't bother about the other two scanning types and do the other thing in parallel. Right? We could consume just SAST and dependency scanning in the new format, which would then support the multi-report thing, and help us with getting rid of Docker and Docker, because as Sam said, we have the 12.4 question mark. We don't know how big this implementation is going to be. Yes. I mean, we have a lot of front-end folks on our disposal, basically, available. And if this is like a high priority focus that customers also want, I know that is the case for Docker and Docker, then we can do it that way.
Lucas, how do you expect that to manifest in the UI? Any change or no change?
I mean, the big problem probably, that's a good question. I would assume that because at the moment we do the comparison on the front end, right? We need to basically go with those two issues and don't change the UI because we have can you scroll up a bit, Sam, please? Because essentially we have the added, fixed, and existing, right? So the UI currently wouldn't change for those three reports, for those two reports. It would still show them sorted by added and fixed. At the moment we showed just added and fixed in the MR widget. So it would still show them those two for SAST and dependency scanning, but just consuming the new API.
It's almost like a UI feature flag you're kind of proposing.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
The other issue with that, which I've just realized, is we would need the old version of the API to do that, but the new version of the API to start migrating things. So then we do find ourselves in a position where we kind of need to support the legacy version of the API, at least for a bit. So, I mean, yeah. It's a tricky one.
I was expecting the work to be more straightforward once you have done with one report. because we have a very consistent API. The only very difference between report types is on the visualization if there are specific fields, but even that, I think we've done a lot of work to make this dynamic. So I don't see the point of splitting that between report types, actually. What would be the gain? Because if you've done it for SaaS, then it's super easy to do it for the other ones. No?
Yes, you're right. You're completely right. We also could, I mean, we can go back to the original plan, do the implementation as planned, but that will probably push out the redesign to a later stage, because the redesign as it's planned right now for 12.3, Andy also asked me about moving it to 12.4 because there's, let's just say with the 4 API endpoints that we have, with the added, fixed, and existing, how it's split right now, wouldn't go well with the pagination plan that we have, and right. So we can move on with the plan as we currently have, which would mean moving the dashboard as is to the new backend. Maybe we even move it down to the new tab so that we have it in the new tab, and the redesign can be in a later stage. And that may involve a new API endpoint that might reuse logic on the backend, right?
I mean, we could, but that's a lot of work to do to then scrap straight after we've done it. Is the only worry.
That's sometimes the cost of iterating, right? Because, I mean, speaking about the UX design, Andy, you reached out to me, right, about the new MVC, and asked about doing engineering discovery now and then having a UX design in 12.4. So it might even be that we miss some requirements. I mean, even with the new design at the moment, we still miss probably some requirements, like, for example, having that summary API or these kind of things, right? Once we dive into UX discovery of having a more dashboard-like approach for the MR, it could be that we even discover that we might need more things, like that we don't even know about yet, right? So basically the unknown unknowns, basically, right? At the moment, we've listed some known unknowns, like that we probably need to switch the API a bit to support the new dashboard kind of thing, but there might even be unknown unknowns. And I know that at the moment the whole load of moving it to the backend is on your back, but I think Olivier is also right. Once we have moved one report to the backend, we are able to reuse. We should be able to also distribute the load, and each front-end engineer, different front-end engineers tackling like one report, right? And additionally, before we had also the concern about moving the pipelines view, but if we go and move the pipelines view to the dashboard view, we can remove the whole backend logic that's regarding with the. We only need to know about the MR widget, right? We don't need to deal with the pipelines view, which we had before. So a whole lot of logic also falls away with that. It's just the thing I'm thinking of just right now.
I also agree that the security report MVC is risky for me, from the UX and the unknowns, like you said, that can happen. And it increased the bulk of changes to ship at once. So either, I would argue that even if it's some work to put on your side, Sam, if you can do that in a crappy way that allow you to save some time, I mean, it's fine to have some depth on that throwable code, but from the UX and from the feature aspect, it will allow us to ship something faster. So I will follow Lucas on this.
I guess that makes sense. Knowing that it's going to be thrown away in the next release almost lets me write it however I want without worrying about how that's gonna work down the line because it'll just disappear, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it'll be a little bit annoying to write something and then delete it. But if it's what we've got to do to move on this, then I guess that's fine.
And that gives you more feedback about how it works well to have logic on the front and the back end instead of the front end. This will give us more time to have stability on these endpoints too, and also to unlock all the topics probably. So a lot of wins.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So I guess the only thing that really changes on this proposal is that we also need to do the backend on I'll update that a little bit, but is to actually just move the reports logic onto the existing MR app, but there's no reason to do that for the pipelines one because we can use the this sort of this version here, which does save a little bit of time, at least.
My big question would also be, should we focus only on the ones where we remove Docker and Docker, or should we also just, for sake of consistency, do it for container scanning and now I'm not messing up Dast?
Well, to make the merge request smaller, I was doing it report by report anyway, but doing the bulk of the work on the first report and then just sort of copy pasting it to the other reports, if that makes sense. So once SAST is like prioritize SAST, but then once that's done, the other three will sort of fall into place anyway. So we might as well do them all, but start with SAST, which is the biggest block. I'm saying that Dast is as well. But yeah, aim to do all the reports, I would say, and then at least they're consistent. Yeah. Okay.
Thomas, sorry.
Can I just clarify now? Because then should we expose JSON as added, fixed, existing, or you want it with the status now? Because Sam is doing this middle step.
I guess there's a question with that. So with this, how we've got this now, how does pagination work, or do we just get all the results and there's no pagination?
So there is just container scanning is merged last week, and it doesn't have pagination now. But you could just include. I think there's a module and that gives a pagination, but I haven't tested.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, so say this was page 1, what would page 2 have?
So I think it's just like, for instance, if there is a lot of added, in page 1, that would like the fixed and existing would be in the second page, I assume.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The only issue I can see with that is we won't know how many were added and fixed right off the bat. It's fine with the other one because I can get the total from the pagination headers, but I'd only get a total number of all the added and fixed together, and I'd have no idea how many of them were added and how many of them were fixed.
Is container scanning already in production or on staging?
Staging.
Let's try it out. I mean, just create a big container scanning report that adds like 40 things and removes one and see what happens.
Today you don't have it anyway. Currently we don't have any pagination. You're doing the same work on the front end side.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Then let's leave pagination out from this thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, if the endpoint's in there, I'm have a play about with it and see what the issues are. So the issue we had with the pagination when I was doing the pipeline report was that it would say you have added, there's 20 vulnerabilities, but in reality there was 300, but we were only returning the first 20.
We can add something like, another field that will give you the count there.
Yeah, I'll play about with the endpoint, see what I can do. If it needs changing, I'll let you know, and we can go from there, I guess.
Okay, sorry. Let me ask a clarification question because something was flying by while I was thinking. And this is, so the item 3 here, this 12.4 report format, did I hear correctly that this has just been added and is not being used by the front end yet at all?
Yes. Yeah, exactly right.
Then what is the cost? Is this the main blocker that needs to be moved in order to enable secure the MVC and in order to allow the MVC for security reports to move forward?
The MVC, the thing that was stopping us moving it forward was, I think, if I heard correctly, was sort of uncertainties with the UX of how it would look and how it would work, and we don't know what might come back and not work with that.
Okay.
I mean, I think people are nodding.
Okay, so there's UX research that needs to be done on this as well.
Yes.
Okay. Then where I was headed is not worth discussing. Okay.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we've got enough to move on from this.
And on one last clarification, you want those single endpoint now, or it's gonna be in this after this UX?
The single endpoint will only be needed when we start moving into the new MR MVC, which we're not doing just yet. So don't worry about it for now, but I guess keep it in the back of your mind.
All right.
Yeah. So we use, for the new MVC, we use 12.3 as an engineering discovery to find out more what we need for from APIs and so on. We use 12.3 to move the reports. We make our life a bit easier by using the existing dashboard for the pipelines view. And we're moving, obviously, because container scanning is done, we should move container scanning first, right? SAST is not done yet, correct? So let's move container scanning first, and then we have a great example soon and can move the other reports as well, with SAST being the second highest priority after container scanning.
That sounds totally sensible.
Yeah, no, dependency scanning and SAST are the highest priorities, right? Because of Docker and Docker. Okay, gotcha. But those have no new backend API yet for the diff. Am I correct as well?
Like I have created MR is in the review for dependency scanning, but it's not no merge or not.
Good. We start with container scanning in order to be not blocked on the front end, and then we can follow with the other two examples, because once we have done it on the front end, it should be rather easy to follow the lead of the other example. And I mean, on still moving to the back end should remove like a bunch of tests and everything from the front end, because the whole comparison logic tests and what we have there can be removed. So it will be nice MRs that actually delete more stuff than they add, probably.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit more positive about where we're going with this now.
Nice. Sam,
which is good.
Do you want to? I mean, we already have like the outline there. Do you want to write it down as a recap in the epic?
Yes, I will do. I'll recap that in the epic, and I'll update all the individual issues as well, and go from there. I just wanted to know what direction I was going in before I started changing everything, and then have to change it back, which would have totally happened if I'd have done it that way around, given this discussion. So I'm glad we did that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for contributing. Thank you, Sam, for leading this. Any more comments regarding this topic?
Not directly to that topic, but as I was doing status update with Can this morning on these issues, it might be great if you can leverage a sub-issues pattern, because it's hard to follow the status between the front end and the back end side as we're making progress on different timelines. So it would be great to do that.
Maybe we could also maintain like a matrix in the epic to see, yeah, this is already moved on backend, this is not moved on front end yet, and these kind of things.
Yeah, that sounds sensible. I can ping me about doing exactly that, Olivier, earlier. I just, again, didn't want to do it before I knew what it was I was going to be doing. So yeah, I'll make sure to do that. Well, thank you, everyone, and see you next week, I guess. Goodbye.